Well, my watch says it's a few minutes after, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon. Welcome to our session on diversity, equality, and inclusion. This task force was formed late last year and really kicked itself off early this year. And we've been meeting about once a month for an hour, hour and a half, trying to see if we can leverage each other. So my agenda for today is I want to talk a little bit about, here we go. I want to talk a little bit about who we are and what we're doing and what we're not doing, if you will, what's not part of our scope. I want to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that we've brainstormed, some of the things we're thinking of. I want to talk a little bit about action items. And then I'm delighted that Brianna Nobles is with us today. Brianna's going to talk a little bit about her experience on this task force. And she's also been working on an educational module, I think is the best way I know to describe it, that would help everybody in the industry better understand diversity, equality, and inclusion. And so I hope we're going to hear a little bit about that too. So this is a smaller group today, so this is going to be really informal. Feel free to chime in or share your thoughts and opinions, ask questions about this. This really was a project that came up on my radar late last year. And what we really wanted to do was to say, we're each on a different journey with DEI based upon what the culture of our organization is, or the efforts that we each have underway. But we wanted to find a way to provide input and feedback to help the industry develop and implement programs that would increase diversity and strive to ensure inclusiveness and equality. We wanted people to share whatever initiatives or efforts they had underway. We wanted to talk about successes and how we could replicate those. We wanted to talk about lessons we learned. Sometimes we learn as much from our failures or where we stump our toes as we do sometimes from the things that work. And so if you had something that didn't work at all, then tell us so that we all learn from that. We wanted to find a way to identify some gaps that need attention and brainstorm ideas that could be used by the individuals, organizations, or by us collectively. So that's really a mouthful to say that this has been just a very collaborative effort. We open the floor for anybody to be part of this conversation. They did not have to be an American Horse Council member. They could be anybody in our space. And we really have tried our best to make sure that people are well aware of what we're doing. And we are still welcoming more people to the table to be part of this conversation. So that's a little bit about what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go with some of this. The participants you see there are the American Youth Horse Council, the Paint Horse Association, RIDE IEA, the American Association of Equine Practitioners, PATH International, the Hunter Jumper Association, Jamie from Purina, Land O'Lakes is part of this conversation, Vicki Lowell from the United States Equestrian Federation, Alexa from the Jockey Club is with us, Ines from Kentucky Equine Education Project, Brianna is part of this, and Gary Carpenter from the National Reining Horse Association. And I want to repeat, we're all on this journey, but we're all in very different places with where we are on this journey. And so that's been a real piece of this is some folks are further ahead and they're sharing their experiences and their wisdom to help those that are just starting. And others are going through learning or education or trying to help their leadership or their employees to figure out what is diversity, equality, and inclusion? What does that mean? And just so it's been, in my opinion, it's been a really great opportunity for us to just kind of say, okay, we're all in this together in some form or fashion. How can we help one another? So here were the 5 questions that I asked myself when we first started this. Why does our organization or our industry care about diversity and inclusion? That was my first question. Why? Number 2, what would our organization or industry look like if it were more diverse and inclusive? What would we gain by being more diverse and inclusive? And what is holding us back from maximizing diverse groups of people? Sometimes we're our own worst obstacles. So how do we maximize that? And then last, what is the one thing we can do to positively impact diversity and inclusion? So that's sort of where my mind started this conversation and sort of what was the impetus for pulling this group together. And so far, as I said, what we've been doing is we've been sharing our experiences, our best practices, some of the lessons we've learned. We've been talking about resources that we have. Some people have already developed collateral, and we've shared some of that. We have talked about the subject of career tracks for upward mobility, different paths that people can take. It's not just about opening pathways to get people in. Yes, it's definitely about that, but it's also about once we get them in, offering them opportunities to go in other places. I think Ines really concisely put this as thinking about people that come into the racing sector and they start off in a very specific position and they don't know how to move forward and go further up in the organization or to accomplish more. So we talked quite a bit about that. And we have a little bit of conversation again about pathways for entry for new employees. And that has taken the form of scholarships. It's taken the form of internships. It's taken the form of other types of initiatives that organizations are using to try to help move the dial in that area. So I'm going to pause there for just a minute before I get to Brianna and ask if there's anybody from the task force who's on here. I see a couple of names. If you want to add anything about what you've gained from this experience on this task force, what's been some of the benefits that you've personally and your organization have benefited from?
I'd be happy to jump in.
Okay,
yeah, it's been really helpful from my vantage point to all the sharing around what different organizations are doing around internal training, or, you know, in our case, it's different than our members, but we're having conversations about how we bring the right messages and the right conversations with our ambassador group as well. But the meetings have been really beneficial for me as I think about driving the right messages back in my organization as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anybody else on here that wants to chime in?
This is Kathy from Cat National. I'm not turning my video on because I had to switch laptops, and this laptop has a loud fan. And apparently with my video off, it's a little bit better. I just want to echo what Jamie said. It has been great to hear what other organizations are doing and get some new ideas, and also get some feedback when we try something that didn't work, get some feedback about why people might not have worked and what maybe could have done differently. So it's a great experience.
Good. Anybody else? Okay, well, we're going to hear from Brianna. So let me make sure you know who Brianna is. So I've got her bio here. And I don't know, do you prefer to go by Bree? That's what's written up in your bio. So I don't
either or.
Either or. Well, she's the founder and owner of Mulatto Meadows. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Right.
And which is an equestrian business dedicated to expanding accessibility of riding and horsemanship to communities that have historically been excluded from the equestrian world. She's really passionate about introducing horsemanship and riding to youth of color and economically disenfranchised populations. She has ridden and trained in both English and Western disciplines. She's done some jumping, some eventing, some ranch versatility, and all kinds of different things. She believes that no matter the focus, whether it's trail riding or show jumping, true horsemanship is a language that transcends all disciplines. And I totally agree with you about that. She recently garnered national attention when she rode her horse, which is called Dapper Dan. I love that name. at the Oakland, California Black Lives Matter protest over the death of George Floyd. The image of her on her 17.1 hand horse has become a beacon of hope. And I had seen her on all kinds of clips on TV. So she's really gotten some notoriety for that effort. She was born and raised around the San Francisco Bay Area. She is a lifelong horse enthusiast. And she began with summers at the barn with her big sister. So this is a family affair, if you will. And when she was 15, she got her first horse. He came off thoroughbred track. And that's sort of what was the direct trajectory to get her into this thing. She has a 2-year-old who is a budding horsewoman herself. And she has been engaged to fellow horseman. Say his name for me, Bree, before I butcher it.
I can say his name correctly, so no worries.
Okay, so we're excited about that. She has just been wonderful working with our team on this task force, and we're delighted to have her. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And if you need to share, you let me know and we can do that. But that's all up to you. I'll let you take it from here.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Julie. I have to say, I'm so elated to be here today, and I can't tell you how exciting it has been for me to see this council come together and just so many different organizations take part in this conversation and just expressing an interest in change, and not only expressing an interest in change, but also coming together to create action-based change, because that is something that I'm very passionate about at this point. Over the last few months, we've seen so many people talk about change within the DEI space and share their stories. And personally, I like to share that I'm quite tired of talking. So seeing organizations, seeing task force like this coming together to actually create that action-based change has just, for lack of better words, given me life through all of this. So it's been very, very exciting. And I have to say, to answer that question of how this has personally benefited me and my organization, it has been phenomenal to see all of these organizations come together towards this common goal. Getting all of these people into the room has given me the opportunity to really understand who the right people to talk to are within these different organizations. So that's enabling me to utilize those resources that really can help my organization impact change. So one problem that I very quickly saw within my organization and within the scope of the work that I do. So we use horses as a medium to inspire positivity in our communities, and we are really working at the grassroots level to make horses more accessible to our communities. So a lot of the work that we do is introducing horses to the community. We use them as an incentive to do, meaningful work within the communities, whether that's getting better grades, whether that's community cleanups, that sort of thing. I thought we would only have a few children that wanted to move forward in programming. So some of our community days, we can reach 500 families. Our programs may see 20 children at a time with our community partners, East Bay Agency for Children. Within our first base level of programming, that's just an introductory course, I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe 10% of those children will want to move forward in the riding? I was very, very wrong with that. Once we started to get children coming through our program, we realized how many kids actually did very well, benefited a lot from this program, and wanted to move forward and really hone their riding skills and move up through the levels of riding. That posed a large problem for me. As you can imagine, I am a small organization. To basically meet the need of the children and families within our community, I would easily have to be an 80 horse riding program, which is not quite a scalable model or very feasible. So it presented me with this issue. I am one person, one very small organization that's trying to do a lot. If I worked around the clock and had all the resources I needed, how many people could I honestly impact? And that brought me towards this aha moment. One person trying to do a lot. Kind of a silly model to think of. So we've sort of changed our way of thinking and thought of things as, well, what if, like, just like this, this council, this DEI council that we've come up with, what if we got a lot of people to do a little instead of just one person doing a lot, one small organization doing a lot? So what we came up with from there is our Humble Equestrian Collective. And the point of this is, as I said before, getting a lot of people to do a little. We have all of these children that want to move forward, all of these kids that, you know, can help improve our DEI memberships as well as youth memberships. How do we get them all involved in moving forward and riding and sort of bridge this gap that we have? And Humble Equestrian Collective comes into play. So the model that we are working on right now, and we actually have a few kids that are piloting this program, is one where we get local trainers to come in and they donate their time and we pay their costs. So what that does for us is we're allowed to take those kids that have learned that base level of horsemanship, and after they've learned a little bit, we say, hey, a little bit, well, what are you interested in? And they can go, Miss Bree, I saw somebody jumping over those poles that one time, or I saw a guy, he was chasing cows, or I saw this guy and he was doing backflips off of a horse. And I can take that interest and I go, oh, I think what you're talking about is vaulting, or you're talking about rein cow horse. And we have all of these trainers that are locally within our network that do all of these different things. And I can then pick up the phone and say, hey, we have 2 kids that are interested in this. Do you have space in your program? That trainer says, yes, we have space in our program. Then our Humble Equestrian Collective can pay their cost. And that trainer would be donating our time to the program. So what that allows us to do is utilize the resources that we have in our community for all of these different trainers that, again, want to do something that can make a little bit of a difference. Because one thing that has really come up with me and been very hard for me is so many people have come to me and said, how can I help? I didn't really have an answer for that before the Equestrian Collective, but now with this programming, we really do. How can I help? Well, do you have one extra horse in your barn that you can, that is a beginner horse that we can send a kid to you and they can ride? Okay, you can. If you donate your time to us, we will cover your costs. And what that does as well is it allows us, I think, the kids ride they ride twice a week. And they also have to maintain a 3.0 GPA, as well as they need to do a certain amount of community service hours every single quarter. And if they do all of that, then we will pay for them. I think the price comes up to, it costs us about $320 a month that we would pay to the trainers for them to be able to be treated like everybody else in their barn. The trainer that we have piloting the program actually is donating that cost right back to the program. So it's enabling us for a very small amount of money to really impact the next generations of riders coming up. But working on this program, I was faced with another issue. So we have all of these children that want to be involved in this Equestrian Collective. They want to be involved in all of these different facets of programming in these different sports. But I thought to myself, oh boy, I'm putting the cart in front of the horse with this. Why am I putting the cart in front of the horse? Well, here we are in these conversations talking about, well, how do we get more youth and how do we get more youth of color into these sports? That's a question all of us are trying to answer right now. But for me, we should be asking ourselves another question first. How can we make our equestrian community a safer place for the people of color that are already within it? That's something that I realized as I thought about, wow, I have all of these trainers in the community that want to take our kids into the program. But how can I then take these little kids and put them into these barns where a lot of the racism and the problems that we see is not necessarily intentional? Okay. But how am I going to put these children into these situations that I know are very uncomfortable, that I've lived with and I've dealt with my whole life? Here I am presenting new people and new kids into a broken, sort of fragmented world. How do I change that? And I've had so many of these trainers, so many of these people also come to me and ask me, Brianna, how do I become an ally? What can I do to make my barn a safer space for people of color to want to be in it. Because again, if I'm bringing these kids in, they're going to be flying right back out the door when they realize, you know, some of the things that can go on in these barns, some of the microaggressions and things that can be had. And honestly, with all of these people asking me these questions, it became very overwhelming for me very quickly. So that presented me with another problem. How do I fix, or how do I impact change with, or give these trainers the tools that they need to make their barns safer places and more welcoming places for these children? And so then I sort of thought about, hey, for our trainers, maybe we could provide them with training. I had a really, really hard time as I looked through the information on the internet, called places to see if there is a specific training that would, you know, give these trainers the tools that they need to make their barns a happy place and to be an ally to us. So that led me towards actually going down the path of working to create our own software. So using sort of the model of Safe Sport, how we all have to go in and you know, learn about sexual harassment and all of those things in order to make our barns a safer space. I thought to myself, well, okay, what if we created a training that would allow these trainers to have the tools that they need to do this? So that's a project that we're currently working on at the moment. And I have to credit the American Horse Council and this DEI task force for putting the resources within the room that I needed to be able to move forward, to really hit the ground running and work on this project. So that's a big thing that we're working on now. And once that is done, we are hoping that that again will give the trainers a tool so that when our kids go out into these worlds, the trainers can, you know, work with their clients, they can work with themselves, you know, and really help make this a safer place for the kiddos, you know. So I mean, I'm so thankful, so thankful to Julie and for bringing this all together. Because what we're trying to do here with the Humble Equestrian Collective is not something that, you know, I want to be just a small idea that's helpful for our communities. What I'm trying to do with this Humble Equestrian Collective is really create a model or showcase a sort of blueprint that we can take and hand to all of the other associations, you know? There's really no need to recreate the wheel. We all are working towards making this a safer place. We're all working towards getting more youth and getting more youth of color and people of color to get in the industry and stay in the industry. So I'm hoping that our equestrian collective that we're already proving is really working as a model that we can then take to all of these associations so that we can provide funding for youth all over the country that are low income to ride on both for free if they're very low income or on a sliding scale. And I'm really hoping that this is something that I can do that will really impact the entire country, you know, and allow a lot of people to do just a little bit. And, you know, with our base of trainers and riders, I mean, heck, if even half the trainers in each organization just said, hey, you'll pay my costs, cool, I can give a slot to one student, you know, and I'm going to make my barn a safe space for that one student. I mean, how many children could we impact at such a low cost? Because that's the one thing, another thing that I've noticed as this conversation of DEI has sort of come up is that there are very few of us here in this space. And the help that has been given is, I notice a lot of the money has been going to small groups of people, you know, like how can we impact the few couple people that are here, you know? And what I really want this to do is be a lot broader than that. I want this to impact large groups of people. I want this to impact entire communities, not just a few riders that are within it, you know? And I think this is a really, really cool way to do that, you know? Every single organization has children that are already in it that could really, really use help. And just, you know, if we took even, I know most of these organizations are giving 20, 30, 40, $50,000 towards impacting DEI change and giving scholarships and things like that. And I just think of what we could do with that $50,000. You know, it costs us for a kid going through our equestrian collective. If we looked at what it costs for that one kid to ride, if this was a completely low income kid and they're riding for free and not on that sliding scale, it would cost us $3,000 for one kid to go through a year's worth of programming and move up in the sport, you know. And so when I think about how many kids, you know, that money could impact through this program and throughout the country, it really just really hits home that I, you know, want to keep really working to show that this model works and then hopefully be able to spread it out through all of the different organizations. So I hope that can be the benefit of the work that my organization is doing for our equestrian community in terms of helping the DEI space and helping change. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Bree. That was great. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, and we're a small enough group that I'm going to encourage folks to unmute yourself and put yourself on video and ask Bree your questions, so I don't have to be the voice to repeat them all.
Perfect. I see a couple of questions here in the chat. So do people want to chime in, or should I just sort of go down through these?
That's up to you. Go for it.
Okay, let me just go down. Okay, so I see Brandy Ebner. Bree, how do you have the funds to cover those costs? I love this idea. Okay, so Brandy, what we're working on right now is, as I said, first and foremost, a lot of the times the trainers are just donating everything back, you know? So what it boils down to is they donate their time and then we pay them $40 per lesson to like cover their horse fees and things like that. Most of these trainers, if they are you know, really interested in the program, it's really, the $40 is nothing for them. So they don't even want it. They just say, hey, we have 2 slots for kids that are open. So in terms of the long term of how we would hope we have funds to sort of do this. My ideas as this has gotten larger, first of all, we're open to having more ideas surrounding just straight fundraising. But as I sort of think of this training going forward, one of the ideas that sort of popped into my head with this training is to say, okay, well, organizations buy into Safe Sport. You know, you have to pay a certain fee to have it hosted, to have your members take it. So what if we thought about this sort of software in a completely, you know, nonprofit space where all of the funds that we get coming in for people to take the software, let's say, we pushed it towards the Equestrian Collective. And then each organization, as they had this software housed on their site and they're getting in, you know, money to do that, that could go towards the fund that could then be spread out towards any children that they have in their organization that potentially need support in riding. So the trainers that are involved in their organization would say, hey, I have a low income kid, they're low income based on, you know, whatever county's threshold. So they get to ride on a sliding scale of 50% and they could apply for assistance to do that as a kid in the Humble Equestrian Collective. So that's sort of my idea that we have going forward that is a possibility. But, you know, a lot of this is really us working through this model to see problems that we might have and how we can make this a sort of sustainable thing so that, you know, once we really have everything built out with the model, can show how it works, we can really just take this to all the different organizations and say, hey, this is a way that we can all impact that change. So that's what we're working on. Let me see, Emily Stearns. If you require students to have volunteer hours, do you help them find volunteer opportunities? Would having path centers as Humble partners be a way to make horsey volunteer opportunities easier to access for students? Or would volunteering at local horse shows or something else industry related count towards their hours? Yes to all of that. Anything, you know, it doesn't necessarily even have to be horse related for the kids to have their volunteer hours. But where we're seeing our kids get our volunteer hours now is like, I'm also a board member of our local horsemanship association. So Metropolitan Horsemen's Association that runs our shows here in the Oakland area. So like we had the kids come out and they're a jump crew. So that was a way they're getting their volunteer hours. Or, just within the barn space, one of the trainers that we have right now, her name is Rachel Bisalian. She's a local event trainer, and she has the kids do volunteer hours mucking stalls around the barn. So that's kind of like a favorite, because also we allow the child's family to take part too. So one thing that we've also noticed with our kids is sometimes they're really busy and the volunteer hours can be hard to for the kids to do. So we allow the families to take part in that as well, which is also something that my organization is very big on, which is bringing the whole family unit into this. So all the programming that we do see, we like for the whole family to come and take a part, and not necessarily just drop their kid off and sit texting on their phone all day. So yes, having PATH centers open to them would be absolutely amazing. And then Thomas, let's see. Brianna, I'm currently facing this challenge at this very moment. I have a parent and their 11-year-old son that want to come work and experience horses at my barn. Do you have any resources that you can point out to me? Let me see. I possibly do, and I can email you after this. Perfect. Does anybody else, since we've gone through those questions in the chat, any other questions that I can sort of work through and answer for people? I actually like this discussion much better. I feel like I'm like kind of talking to myself up here when I'm reading through the chat. It's so much more fun to connect with people face to face.
Brianna, how many horses do you currently have at your own facility?
We're moving into our new facility actually July 1st. So God, I can't tell you, we have an exponential amount of change that is about to happen. So right now, currently in our program, we have 11 horses. And by the end of the month, we're going to be working in to bring in at least 10 more.
Great, that's outstanding.
Thank you. Any other questions I can answer for people? Anything that you think I missed, Julie?
No,
I'm sorry.
I don't think you missed anything. I know you've been having some conversations with Vicki about whether or not this educational software might be something you and USEF might work on collaboratively. So have you got some other partners maybe out there that you've been talking with about how do we spread the love? How do we get the word out about this thing when it's ready?
We've really just been working behind the scenes at the moment, just trying to make sure we get everything squared away with the company that's going to be building things out for us. So that's really where we're at in the process right now, is just trying to make sure that we have everything there before we move forward with anything else.
Well, don't let me forget, at some point, the outdoor recreation industry is really working hard to try to bring in underrepresented individuals into the outdoor recreation space. Same challenge that we're having is they can't identify with being a forest ranger or a biologist or something because they don't see people that look like them in those spaces necessarily. So they have a consultant they're working with to put together a DEI training curriculum for the outdoor industry. And we could piggyback with them and see if we can find some ways to cross-pollinate some things there. So
that would actually be phenomenal, I have to say, because what we're doing on this new property here, so our property is very centrally located, right within the 10 minutes away from the populations we want to impact. And the big thing that I am really pitching with all of this stuff is sustainability. So, and showing sustainable models that can then be taken and implemented throughout the country in other programs everywhere. So a big thing that we're working on here is A, community, but B, showing how to sustainably keep livestock within the confines of city boundaries. Because a big problem that we're having with DEI spaces and with, this whole thing is accessibility. How can we make this more accessible to these communities when the cost of keeping these horses within the confines of city boundaries is ridiculous, So when you have these sorts of programs, they can exist in the more country spaces and they're not that expensive, but there generally aren't people of color in a lot of those places. So what our work with this ranch is trying to do is show how to take our costs down, and so that we can sustainably keep the animals and be able to impact our kids without having, $1 million operating budgets every year. So the company that I've linked up with is actually a biotechnology company, and they are going to be testing a biodigester on the property. So And we also have, we're working on a fodder system right now. So our fodder system is going to allow us to actually grow all of our, or most 80% of our feed for our livestock on the property. And it's going to take our hay cost down by about half. And then we're going to sustainably dealing with what comes out of our horses. By all of our manure is going to be going into a biodigester that is actually going to be fueling the entire property and providing all the energy. So that's addressing two of the main expenses that we have when we keep livestock within inner city spaces. Because hay prices, it may not be real expensive for you guys that are out in the city, but finding quality hay here in California within this drought, first of all, the drought can bankrupt you because hay prices can go from being $15 a bale to 40 in a blink of an eye. And also dealing with the shipment and storage within these smaller facilities that we have makes it very impossible. Handling the manure, we can't even spread the manure here. We can't hold it on the property. So it leaves us, we actually have to haul everything off of the property and dump it, which, I mean, the pricing is crazy. So we're hoping by showing and creating this sustainable model, this is something that can be implemented for all of the other wonderful programs that are working within these inner city spaces, how to do it. So that's going to really enable us, like I said, to work within the inner city spaces, and the community work that we're doing is really to spark that interest, to show other people, show these children that there are people like them that work there and that there are jobs. One of our programmings, A Herd of Trades, is actually going to allow the kids to come in and learn about these specific trades and job paths. So the hydroponics that's necessary for our fodder system, going in to see how that biodigester works and talking about the ag engineering, that, you know, those are all jobs that the tracks that these kids can take. Some of the ag plumbing, some of the ag electrical things, all of these things that are things that these children will be learning coming up through our programming here. So I'm hoping that this is a model that, you know, like I said, some of the organizations would help us fund. And if we can show that this is a sustainable model that works, this is something, like I said, that can be implemented with so many other wonderful programs throughout the country.
I'm looking on my screen because I was going to ask Kathy if she's out there. Kathy, remind me of the program that Adam Dario had downtown in Denver, where they were bringing kids from the schools over to ride. How are they leveraging transportation? Do you recall a little bit of that?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, they had agreements with the school system, and so they are using or were school transportation to bring them over for therapeutic riding lessons.
Yeah. So I've thought of that only because the question in the chat for you, Bree, was about were you working on transportation options for students that are located in places that are not quite as convenient to reach you. So we're kind of curious about how you were handling that.
Yes, so actually the new facility locations, it's in a city called Castro Valley, which is actually neighboring to Oakland. So from, you know, some of the worst parts of Oakland, we're actually only about a little less than 10 minutes away, which is really, really cool. So it makes it, all of our community partners, it makes it easier for them to reach out to us. So what I'm actually working on is I work with organizations and not necessarily the individual, if that makes sense. And what that does is it takes some of the heavy lifting off of my plate. So like one of our community partners is actually San Francisco Police Department. So we're working on programming with them, and they work with an organization called Mercy Housing, as well as the Boys and Girls Club. They all have their own buses. So they're actually able to then just bus all the kids to me. Same thing with East Bay Agency for Children. So they're one of our main partners. The reason I chose them is just because it's a lot of administrative work to check to see if kids are low income and, you know, all of that sort of thing. So what I do partnering with them is they do all that work for me. All of their kids, you know, come basically, they're all low income, and they all come attached to a caseworker that drives them wherever they need to go, which is amazing for us because it also allows us to create values and metrics and gives us numbers, you know, in terms of how our programming impacts these kids. So transportation is actually not that big of an issue for us because all of these organizations have their different ways that they transport their kids to the program. And even some of our like working students, those sort of kids that are coming from the community, because there definitely have been kids that reach out that say, I really, really, really want to be a part of Horses and I don't have the money to do it. Great, come do some work, let's get you moving. Those kids, we're located right next to public transportation. So our train system is literally, we have one that's like 6 minutes away, and the busing system, you know, it's basically take the bus and you've got a 2-minute heel toe express ride to get out to the barn. So for me, those kids that are motivated have absolutely no problem making the hike to get to us.
Yep, yep, good, good. Other questions for Bree? Well, Bree, I want to say thank you so much for sharing. We're really excited about what you're doing out there, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on this task force as we go forward and look for some more innovative ways to kind of help address the issue. So
Yes, thank you
Right.
guys so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love being a part of this, and I'm excited to see all of the amazingness that comes from it.
great, great. Okay, well, folks, my clock says it's about 1:15, so I'm going to give you a little break before our last session. I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'm glad we're wrapping up. But our last session is a conversation around the economic impact study. So if you're interested, come back for that, because we're going to have a really candid conversation about whether or not the plan to do the study in 2022 is really feasible and smart, given that we aren't really totally recovered from a pandemic. I'm not certain if we're going to pull it off. So we'll have some more conversation about that when we come to the top of the hour at 3. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Bree, very much.
Yeah, great job, Bree. Thank you.
Yeah.